Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Straight Up Solar webinar that's all about the good news about solar incentives. Let's go ahead and get started. First, I would like to introduce your presenters for this webinar. My name is Riley Francis. I'm a marketing coordinator for Straight Up Solar. I've been working with Straight Up Solar since the year 2018, and I enjoy working for Straight Up Solar. It's very exciting for me because I help people make a smart choice for their wallet and for the environment. And today I am joined by project developer Kai Ajayi. Kai works on residential and commercial projects here at Straight Up Solar, and he's also our resident expert on Solar for All projects. And Solar for All is an Illinois initiative to make solar more accessible to low income and environmental justice communities. So thank you, Kai, for being here today. All right, a little about Straight Up Solar. We were founded in 2006. We serve Illinois and Missouri. We are the winner of 12 Midwest Renewable Energy Association Group Buy programs. We have installed over 28 megawatts of solar power over the course of 1,700 installations. We are a part of the Amicus Solar and O&M cooperatives. We're a certified B Corporation. We have 80 employees, of which we have more than 25% with our North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners certification. And we have 10-year workmanship and production warranties. Our vision for our business is to care for others by creating a path for clean energy and a sustainable economy that honors our values and everyone's healthy shared future. Our clear values are community first, lead the solar tribe, educate, advocate for smart solar policy, respect for people and planet, and excellence in all we do. So Straight Up Solar is a certified B Corporation, and what it means to be a B Corp is that we report on the sustainability of our business, not just for our environmental sustainability, but also the sustainability for our workers, customers, suppliers, and community. And every day we strive to make our business the best that it can be for both people and the planet. So now let's get into the topics we will cover during this presentation. First, we'll be talking about the Federal Investment Tax Credit, the FITC, which has been extended for the year 2021. Then we will get into the Illinois SREC program, the Ameren Missouri rebate, and then we will put it all together with a few examples, and then we will take questions and answers. And now I will turn it over to our project developer, Kai Ajayi, to go through the rest of the presentation.
Thanks so much, Riley. As Riley said, we'll begin by talking about one of the major incentives for going solar, the Federal Investment Tax Credit. So this came about in 2006. It's been extended twice, most recently this year, and is going to be around for the next 2 years. What is it? Well, for those residential and commercial properties that go solar, you have a one-for-one, non-refundable tax credit against liability. Bit of a mouthful. I'll talk about that in some more detail in just a second. If you can't monetize that tax deduction, that tax credit in the first year, on the residential side, you can carry it over for 1 more year. On the commercial side, you can carry it over for 20 years. So don't worry if you can't maximize that tax credit in year 1, you have options. What does the tax credit apply to? Everything related to your solar installation. So when you get a bill from Straight Up Solar for X number of dollars for your solar array, that X times 0.26 gives you the amount that your federal tax credit is going to be. Now, this is only if you purchase the array. You could purchase it through a loan. You could pay for it in cash. If you lease the array, then technically you don't own the array. The company that's leasing you the array does, and they get to monetize the tax credit. So in 2 years, the tax credit is due to phase down to 10% and then go away completely. We don't know what the current administration is going to do about that. So we have to wait and see. But in terms of maximizing this credit, you got 2 years to go ahead and get that 26% for sure. Excuse me. Here's an example of the tax credit at work. Let's look at a couple that has W-2 income, or an individual has W-2 income of $75,000. And let's assume, for the sake of argument, that they have the tax deductions, child credit, all that good stuff that comes up to $25,000. So their taxable income is $50,000. Again, for the sake of argument and simple math, let's assume that their tax liability is 10%. So what they owe the government at the end of the tax year is $5,000. Now let's assume they bought a solar system for $2,300. I'm sorry, $2,300, I wish. $23,000. In that case, 26% of that cost of the solar system is $5,980. Okay, that's their tax credit. So let's look at this table over to the right. You have tax liability of $5,000. Let's say this is Jack and Jill, who are in this situation that bought this array. Excuse me. So they were really smart. They said, listen, we don't want to be caught having to pay the government any money at tax time. So what we're going to do, we're going to have our employers withhold from our checks an amount such that at the end of the year, $5,000 total would have been withheld. So that when it comes tax time, we file our taxes, we've had 5,000 withheld, we owe 5,000, it's a wash. So that's what they do. Except during the course of the year, they buy this $23,000 solar system, and they now have this tax credit of $5,980. But wait a minute, they've already had 5,000 withheld, and now they have a tax credit of $5,980. So guess what? They owe nothing, and they still have $980 to apply the following year. So if they have a similar situation with a tax liability of $5,000, they'd actually only owe $4,020 So if they would only write a check for 4,020 rather than the full 5,980, and the full 5,000, I'm sorry. Let's think about Jack and Jill. Exactly the same situation, the same earnings and so on, except they don't agree with sending any money or having any money withheld so that the government earns interest on it over the course of the year. Instead, they instruct their employers to withhold nothing. And instead, Jack and Jill put into the bank an amount such that every month they put an amount in such that at the end of the year, they have 5,000 in the bank because they know that's what they're going to owe. Well, in their case, when it comes time to write the check to Uncle Sam for $5,000, and they've installed an array with a 5,980 credit, they get to keep all that money in the account because they owe no taxes. And they have 980 that applies to the following year. So the following year, they save the 5,000 again. They only have to send off 4,020. They get to keep the 980. So this is one way I like to illustrate that the tax credit is so much more valuable than a tax deduction. Tax deduction just reduces the amount of income on which you have to pay taxes. Tax credits hit the taxes themselves, and one for one, they take that money off the table so you don't have to pay it to the government. So tax incentives tax credits can be very, 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 very valuable. Let's look at state incentives next. Excuse me. The state of Illinois has something called the Solar Renewable Energy Credit Program. And here that's based on the amount of energy that your system produces. And basically, the Illinois Power Agency, through their Illinois Shines program, will pay you for 15 years of your production up front. We'll talk about that in some detail in just a second. In Missouri, they have a different system where they pay you 25 cents per kilowatt of your the size of your array. And while this varies by utility, for the most part, 25 cents per watt is the general rule. And we'll talk about that in some detail in just a moment. Let's look at the SRECs first. So the Future Energy Jobs Act that was passed in 2016 required that the utilities get to 25% of their energy production from renewable sources by 2025. And there's no way that Ameren and ComEd and some of the smaller local utilities could meet that goal without the help of solar arrays installed by residents. So what the utilities have done, if you have an Ameren bill, for example, you can look on the bill and there's a renewable energy charge on there. That money gets put aside in a fund that is then going to pay homeowners who put solar on their roofs. It's going to pay them for the energy because the utilities want the rights to those renewable attributes. They want to be able to say, the energy being produced from Kai's roof, that's our energy as Ameren. Now, the energy is still flowing to your home. It's still feeding your meter. It's still running your electrical devices. But Ameren gets to say that's their power. That's fine. They get to pay for it, so who cares? What do they pay and how do they pay? For every megawatt hour or 1,000 kilowatt hours that your system produces, that's considered one solar renewable energy credit. And for that, in the current block, you get paid $75.29. Now, the average home produces about 8 megawatts a year, so that's 8 SRECs. So the contract that you'll sign with Carbon Solution Group, which is the approved vendor that Straight Up Solar works with to handle the whole SREC transaction, you'll sign a contract with them, and there's a funky calculation that folks go into to estimate the production over 15 years. We just did the easy math here for the example. But for systems under 10 kW AC, 10 kilowatts AC, that's the AC side of the array, you get paid with one check. Approximately 9 to 12 months after your system is installed, you get a check. Now, there's some money taken out of that for the Carbon Solutions fee, and there's a bond, potentially some collateral. But for the most part, you get the vast majority of the money up front, and that bond and collateral is returned to you in year 15. So Carbon Solutions Group aggregates all of the SRECs that they get from various residential solar systems and then sell them to the utilities, Ameren, ComEd. And then Carbon Solution Group receives those SRECs from the Illinois Shines program and then distributes them to the solar owners. But let's look at an example to see how this plays out in the real world. A 7.7 kW DC system in this part of the world, central Illinois, as I said, produces roughly about 8 megawatts a year. So if you take 8 megawatts times 15, that gets you 120 megawatts. Multiply that, that's or 120 SRECs. Multiply 120 by 75.29, you get $9,034. So probably coming to you will be something around $8,500. And again, it's one check for you to use as you will. Now, let me note that this is, some accountants argue that this is considered income and you should plan to pay taxes on it. Other accountants have a different perspective. Either way, consult with your own tax professional to find out exactly how these SRECs will apply to your situation. Illinois Solar for All program. Now, this is another Illinois incentive, one that I work with quite a bit. The idea here is to ensure that Black and brown and poor communities don't get overlooked with solar the way that they were overlooked when the information superhighway was being built. As you probably know, many of the Black and brown communities and poor communities are suffering from a lack of broadband access because they weren't really considered in the rollout of that technology. So Solar for All exists to try to make sure that in this rollout of solar, those communities in low income and environmental justice areas can realize significant savings from solar. There are 3 sub-programs within the Illinois Solar for All program. The nonprofit and public facilities program, which deals with obviously nonprofits and public facilities that provide critical services to their communities. So churches, local government buildings, fire stations, the local Y, that sort of thing. Then there's the low income distributed generation subprogram. Here, if an individual earns 80% or less than the area median income, then they qualify to get solar under this program. And then finally, there's community solar, which we don't deal a lot with, but it's basically solar farms that produce energy and folks in low income areas can subscribe and get low cost, get their energy bills offset by the energy from community solar. I'm proud to say that here in Central Illinois, I was a part of an effort to get solar for the Habitat for Humanity Restore here in Bloomington, for the Normal Township Activity and Recreational Center in Normal, that's a public facility, Wayman AME Church and Heavens View Church in Peoria. So all of these folks got solar arrays ranging from $75,000 to $600,000 at zero cost to them. And they buy the tenants of the program, they must receive at least 65% savings over what the cost of that energy off the array would have cost them had they bought it directly from the utility. So these folks are receiving significant savings and being able to use those savings to better serve their community. In Missouri, in 2018, the solar rebate was instituted, and it's going to last until 2023. So those investor-owned utilities like Ameren and Evergy and Empire Electric, they are going to participate in this solar rebate. Co-ops typically do not. And basically the way the rebate works is you look at the DC size of the array, and then you multiply that by 25 cents, and there's your rebate. Now it's capped at 25 kW, kilowatts for residential systems and 150 kilowatts for commercial systems. So if you combine this solar rebate and net metering, which we'll talk about in a second, you can actually get some quite significant savings in Missouri. Not quite as great as what you see in Illinois, yet and still nothing to sneeze at. As I like to say, better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. Where that saying came from, I don't know, but yeah, I'll definitely take a little bit of rebate over a poke in the eye. Net metering. In this example, your solar array is, nice sunny day, it's collecting a lot of energy, it's sending it into your home. Well, you're at work, if it wasn't a COVID period, but run with me for this. You're at work during the day, you're not using a lot of energy in your home. So a lot of that energy goes into the grid. You can imagine the grid being your virtual battery. So let's say your solar system is producing 1,000 kilowatt hours, and you're only using 100. 900 kilowatt hours go sit in the virtual battery that we're calling the grid. And then you come home at night, and all of a sudden your usage jumps up. Well, before you start using energy from the grid that you're paying for, you've got those credits that you have to use up before you actually start using the energy from the grid. And when you look at the math at the end of the day, so you produced 1,000, used 100 in the day, let's say, and 400 at night, so there's 500 left over. That 500 stays in the grid as a credit to you, either at the end of the month or at the end of what they call the true-up period, depending on which utility you're in. So net metering is a way for you to store the extra energy that you produce but don't use off your array, and then either use it later in the day or later in the month, and then get credit for it at the end of your billing cycle or at the end of what they call the true-up period. All right, let's try to put all this together and see what it means as a bottom line situation. Let's start in Missouri. Here we have a solar array that's about 7.5 kilowatts, that's DC, and it costs just over $22,000 to build this array. The Ameren rebate is $1,875, 7.5 kilowatts, 7,500 watts, times 25 cents, or a quarter of that gives you the $1,875. You've got the 26% investment tax credit of $5,800 almost. So the total incentives are just over $7,600. When you look at that as a percentage of the project cost, you're reducing your project cost by 35%. So that's not an insignificant savings at all. Over a third of the cost of the array is covered by incentives. Let's take a look at the Illinois side. Here we have a slightly larger array, 8 kilowatts. The project costs $23,600. Using Block 4 pricing, the solar renewable energy credits are just a hair under $9,000. The investment tax credit is just over $6,000. So you're looking at incentives of $15,000, reducing your solar array cost by 64%. Very significant. So a third of a reduction in Missouri, 2/3 of a reduction in Illinois. Either way, a reduction is a reduction. You're getting solar at much less than the total cost of the solar.
Great, thank you, Kai, for taking us through that presentation. I would like to share the 5 easy steps for going solar. The first step on your solar journey, you will share some basic information about your home with a solar support specialist to get you started. And then the second step, the solar support specialist will share this information with a project developer, such as Kai, and the project developer will put together for you a customized system layout, proposal, and contract. If you review the proposal and you decide to sign the contract, you will then work with your project manager through the engineering, designing, and permitting process. The fourth step in the solar journey is to set a date for our highly trained installation crew to come out to your home and build, inspect, and energize your system. And then the fifth step is to enjoy your new solar array. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this presentation. We will be reviewing questions in just a moment. I would like to point out that on the slide we have Kai's contact information. If you would like to reach out to get a customized, no cost, no obligation solar quote, please feel free to reach out. His email is kai.ajayi@straightupsolar.com, and his phone number is 309-319-6093. You can also visit us at straightupsolar.com for more information. Thank you.